another video, another installment regarding the law. Everything, of course, we discuss everything family as well as criminal defense related. That includes things like custody, divorce, and felony, as well as misdemeanor charges, okay, and criminal defense. That being said, my name is Genghis Shakhan. I am a managing attorney here at Shakhan and Wilkerson Law. I'm always open with telling you a little bit about our law firm. We are a boutique law firm and we are small on purpose. Our goal, of course, is to serve Georgians. We do that in really a small batch way. That is our business model because we prefer to get to know our clients, get to know a little bit about their cases, so that we can be better positioned to help them meet their legal goals. We are not a cookie cutter law firm. We are not a big law firm where clients might get lost and be a number in a sea of clients. Our clients do get to know us on a more personal and intimate level, and we find that that works best for us. It works best for our clients, and so we don't want every client. We don't want to be large. That is not our ambition. That is not our goal. That being said, of course, if you need legal representation, you can always go into our the link in our bio. You can always get scheduled. You can chat with us there if you'd like to and prefer to chat as opposed to actually make a call just yet. But if you'd like to call, if you'd like to schedule a consultation, you can do that too. Let me give you a couple of numbers that'll work for you. You can always call us at 404-999-9529, or you can call us at 478-845-1213. Both numbers work, and we also have other numbers we serve, Savannah and Augusta. If you can go to our website, you can find those numbers there as well if you prefer to call a local number. All right. I've already said that I'm Genghis Shakhan, so I am one of a tandem. I mentioned us being a boutique law firm, so there are two attorneys. There's myself, and there's attorney Chelsea Wilkerson. And so we work together as a team, as we have done for, I think, the last 5 years serving Georgia. All right. So today's topic is a great one because it's a question that we frequently get in consultation. And I see, of course, online that it's a question that a lot of clients and even potential clients have regarding underwriting the cost of their case, whether that's going to be in PI, which is personal injury, or something like family law, or in criminal defense or business law. Of course, we know that law touches all areas of people activity, but there is a cost associated with representation, and not all lawyers bill the same. Okay, and so that's what we are dedicating this video to. Today is discussing the fee structure for at least our law firm, and of course some other law firms, and they're going to vary depending on practice area. They're going to vary depending on the level of experience. They're going to also vary on the level of specialty or specialization that a firm might have, and there may vary on the level of where they fall on the org chart. Okay, you might have a partner doing representation as opposed to an associate. It might vary again between a paralegal and someone like the receptionist. Okay. And there, of course, might be costs associated with those things. So, there might be court fees. There might be fees to file. Okay. There might be fees to hire experts like forensic accountants, forensic psychiatrists. Okay. There might be printing fees. There might be traveling fees. And so there's a lot of potential costs that go into litigation. For those of us that, know a law and, legal representation, we know that this stuff is not cheap. Okay. And so, it does come with the cost. And that's before you start talking about, court appearances, trials, legal research, all that good stuff. Okay. So there is a cost that's associated with it, and we're going to discuss that today. So that's the little roadmap. Before we, of course, kick things off, I always like to get started with this disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only. This is not intended to be legal advice, okay? By watching this video today, this does not establish an attorney-client relationship between you and the law office of Shakhan and Wilkerson. Okay, so always keep that in mind when you are reviewing these videos. But of course, in reviewing these videos, if they are helpful to you, go ahead and give us a like. If you know someone that is going through they may have a legal matter. This might be helpful to them. Make sure you share it. You should probably make sure you follow, especially if you've viewed a couple of our videos thus far. You might want to hit that follow button. You may want to hit that notification button so when we do create these videos that you're being notified immediately. Okay, and so we have a number of videos. I strongly recommend going through the library if you have a legal matter, especially if they sound in either family law or in criminal defense. There's probably something here in our library that is going to be helpful to you. You can also hit that link in our bio. It's going to take you to our website. You're probably going to find, if you go over to some of our blogs, we probably have some resources for you so that you can review that might help you, especially if you're going to be making an informed decision about whether or not you want to move forward with representation, especially with our firm. Of course, if you don't, that's fine. However, we want you to be an informed consumer. That's really important to us. It's important to us. We are very, very transparent with our callers. We're very transparent with our clients. And so this is just another way for us to really demystify the process when it comes to retaining an attorney and what is involved, especially when you're talking about underwriting the cost of retaining an attorney and basically financing that endeavor. Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and do our deep dive into our discussion today. And this is going to be again how lawyers charge clients. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about understanding attorney fee structures before you hire a lawyer. A lot of times I will get a call, someone is really interested in moving forward with retaining our office, but they're a little confused about the fee structure. And so, hopefully, after watching this video, you won't be one of those folks. Okay, especially if you're shopping for representation. All right. So, one of the biggest questions that we get, of course, is how much does a lawyer cost, or at least in the context of attempting to engage our office, how much does a particular service cost, and how much do we charge as attorneys? Okay, so for example, and this being transparent with you, our attorneys charge a bill at 350 per hour. Okay, in our billable hour services. Okay, so we have two different levels of services. We have services that are billable by the hour. We also offer flat fee services. Okay, for the flat fee services, and we'll talk a little bit about that here shortly. Those are mostly in criminal defense. However, something like, for example, uncontested divorce may fall under a flat fee service. Something like our representation when it comes to defects, if not defects, well, defects in juvenile court may fall under a flat fee service. Okay, and so we would have a conversation with you via telephone in the consultation, finding out what exactly the services that you need, so we can let you know where your what kind of fee structure that you would be looking at. Okay, so that is one question, of course, that you should be asking, and it's a question that we get frequently during our consultations: is how much does the service cost, and how will the law firm bill me for this service? Okay, and so let me talk really, really quickly about why understanding these fees matter and why choosing an attorney isn't just about pricing. Okay, so I'm going to say that again because that's important. Choosing an attorney isn't just about pricing, and that goes for really anything and everything in your life, right? If you're buying a house, It's not just about pricing. If it were, then everyone would just purchase perhaps the cheapest house, right? You are looking for the right house. You are looking for value, but you're also looking for quality. That same thing may go for a car, okay? Or it may go for a hotel where you plan to have your family. It may go for a firearm, right? Whatever it is that you're purchasing, you of course want value, especially during this time, but you also may be looking for some other things. So when it comes to the in context of retaining an attorney, one thing you may want to be really mindful of is experience. Okay. So you may find an attorney that is in within your budget, but do they have the experience to essentially push the needle in your case, all right? Push the envelope in your case, right? To make certain that your legal goals are going to be met in your case. Okay. If they are a new attorney, then perhaps their cost is going to be reflected in that, right? If they are an inexperienced attorney, perhaps the cost is going to reflect that, okay? If they are a junior or an associate attorney, their cost might reflect that, all right? And so all of that is going to, should be at least considered when you're talking about costs. The other is going to be communication. Okay, so if the attorney is accessible to you, okay, so some complaints, if you just do a brief Google search, you'll find that one of the major complaints from clients that have retained law offices. This is not a complaint our clients have, but is attorney-client communication. Okay, and so are they accessible? Okay. And so again, when you're doing that cost benefit analysis, this is what we tell our clients. You have to do a cost benefit analysis. You want to make sure that your attorney is accessible. All right. So, of course, that price point might reflect their accessibility. Maybe, maybe because the price point was so low, you're going to find that they are not the most accessible. And maybe that's because they've taken on way too many clients. Okay. Remember, we are a boutique and small law firm, so those are not the kind of problems that we have. That's not our law firm's testimony. Okay. We are small on purpose. It's intentional. Okay. We want to make sure that we are providing a certain level of service. That level of service is reflected in our cost. That level of accessibility that we provide to our clients is reflected in our cost. Our level of experience standing in front of judges, arguing divorce cases, arguing criminal defense cases, is reflected in our cost. We are in court on a weekly basis. We litigate on a weekly basis. Not every attorney litigates. Okay. Not every attorney is involved in high conflict cases, high conflict litigation. Not every attorney can handle big cases. Those things are reflected in our cost. Okay. So if you think of it this way, you think of a surgeon that's had 20 years of experience, done all of these operations, and is, I don't know, has some kind of seniority on the job. They are going to bill at a different rate than someone that is fresh out of medical school, has never performed a surgery, and this is all very new to them. Okay. And so the cost might be different. Okay. Might be disparities in cost. But again, you got to do that cost benefit analysis, do the risks, outweigh the possible reward. That is a you decision. Okay. You have to decide that for yourself. And what we tell clients is when it's high stakes, and usually when it involves children, when it involves custody, when it involves things like your home, your retirement, which may have millions of dollars in it, hundreds of thousands of dollars in it, to me, that is high stakes. To me, I want to hedge my bets. However, that is Genghis's perspective on it, right? So I'm going to do a cost benefit analysis, and I am going to probably, because I have not, if I am just a layperson, a consumer, I have not attended law school. I don't have the time nor the bandwidth to get caught up on everything family law or criminal defense. I am probably going to hire an expert to do it. All right. It's the same with, of course, repairing my car. Okay. I am not going to fix my own brakes. All right. I do not have the expertise nor the time to invest in finding out how to do it, how to do the job safely, efficiently, and cost effective way. Okay. But that's tangential, but that's my perspective, and that's what I try to share with clients when they are, because clearly thinking about how you're going to underwrite the cost of representation is no laughing matter. It's serious, right? You're committing your hard-earned resources to essentially finding representation that is going to hopefully resolve your legal issue. So it's important that you make the right decision and you find someone that's going to be the right fit and the right law firm. Okay. So mention communication, predictability, so in predictability in terms of what kind of work product are you going to get? Is it going to be, the same work product that every client gets? Okay. You can sometimes see that in the Google results. I mean, the Google review results specifically, right? You read what other clients may have to say or previous clients have to say about that attorney or that law firm's representation. Okay. Are they consistent? Okay. And some of the things there's always going to be negative reviews, right? That's just, I don't know a business that does not have, a few one stars or a few two stars. There's always going to be disgruntled folks. However, what are they saying about the representation? What are they saying about the firm's work ethic? What are they saying about accessibility and communication? Okay. That stuff is important. What are they saying about, the litigation portion of the representation? That's the stuff that you want. You got to be able to read through the lines and make certain that you can predict what that work product might look like if you do decide to engage this particular law firm. And again, you want to speak, that's going to speak also to some of the results that you want to see. And you want that consistency in terms of results. Every attorney does not win every case. Let's just be clear, okay? And you always want to be careful with red flag if you get some kind of guarantees, because the attorney may have a good relationship, good rapport with the judge. However, a case can always go, a number of different ways. Sometimes you'll go in front of one judge with one set of facts, you go in front of another judge with the same set of facts, and you'll get two different rulings, right? And the same goes for a jury, okay? And so you got to keep that in mind when you're talking about results. But is the attorney in that law office going to put their best foot forward? Are they professional? Are they going to really deliver for you so that you are in the best position to prevail? That is what we are looking for. So keep in mind that the cheapest attorney may not be the most least expensive in the long run. Okay. It's like getting a cheap carpenter. Okay, that builds you or does some kind of improvement on your land, does something for your home, and they do a bad job, and then you have to hire that pricey, more competent carpenter to come and fix, maybe demolish what was done inappropriately, fix it, and build it the way it's supposed to be built, and it might end up costing you double. Okay. And so cheap does not always mean it's the best option. So keep that in mind. All right, now let's talk a little bit about hourly billing. Okay. And so this is something that you'll see in a lot of divorce cases, child custody cases. in civil litigation and in business litigation. Okay. And how it works is an attorney bills by the hour and their time on the project is tracked. Okay. And so it might not just be the attorney. Again, it might be the paralegal, it might be a legal assistant, it might be an associate attorney, the receptionist, like all of that might come into to play when it comes to billable hours. And usually all that's going to be tracked is going to be on your invoice. And you as the client, you pay for all that work that has been done in your case. Okay. Whether that's litigation in court, whether that's legal research outside of court, whether that's the paralegal drafting of documents, whether it is the process server getting things served. Okay. That might qualify more as a fee, but it's still going to probably be wrapped in to your overall cost. Okay. And so again, as a client, you're paying for the actual work that is being performed on a billable level. So things like emails, phone calls, court appearances, drafting of things like motions, research, discovery, trial preparation, all of that is going to be factored into a billable hour situation. All right. So the pros of that type of setup is that you're paying only for the work that is being performed, and it's very flexible. Okay. So usually, the way billable works is if they're not working on your case, the law firm's not working on your case, then you're not paying anything. Okay. And so that works out well, bodes really well for the client in some instances. And just there's a level of flexibility. Okay. The cons about, of course, billable hour is it's very difficult to predict an overall cost. And so that is what some of our clients grapple with before they decide to move forward is, hey, well, what is going to be the total cost? And the typical lawyer answer, if you've been following us for some time now, you guys can say it with me, is that depends, right? So some cases move very fast, some cases move slow. Some cases are more complex. There's a lot of motions being filed. There's a lot of court time. There's a lot of discovery. There's just robust, marital assets that have to be accounted for. There's going to be a forensic team that's going to be involved. There are other experts involved. It can lengthen the case. The more complex a case, the longer a case kind of goes on. There might be a lengthy trial involved. That can really make costs balloon. Okay. But a case may settle in the second month. Okay. Or the third month, or a case may settle at mediation. And so in those situations, the cost might be a little smaller. Okay. More inexpensive than the case that makes its way to trial. And so it just really depends. I always tell folks, you can probably you can run a query through something like Chat GPT and ask for a range in your area. Okay. Because a lot of times that might differ by locality. Okay. So of course, in the state of Georgia, there's a range, and then maybe that range is going to look a little different in Georgia than it might look in New York or in California. Okay. But we're specifically talking about here in Georgia. So predictability is a concern when it comes to billable hours. And so there are also retainer fees, and that's usually coupled with the billable hour is the retainer fee. And that retainer is nothing but an advanced deposit, okay, on the future work that the lawyer and the law firm will do, okay. And so that retainer is usually not it's not a flat fee, but it's a fee, and it's not a total fee, but it is basically a deposit that sits in the trust account, that their client's trust account, and the attorney earns the money and bills against that account as they are working your case. Okay. And so if the retainer is, excuse me, something like $10,000, as the attorney works your case, the attorney is billing against that retainer. Okay. And if, of course, we just talked about billable hours. If there is a billable hour set up, then the attorney is billing against the retainer, which is that advance deposit that sits in the trust account. Again, only for work that has been done and completed by that law firm. Okay, so when a retainer is depleted, the client may be required to replenish it. So in our firm, of course, we do an evergreen retainer, and so many law firms that do billable hours that have retainers, as you deplete those funds, an invoice might be sent out to you with the expectation of you essentially replenishing funds that have been utilized and pulled out of your retainer. So keeping your retainer essentially where whatever standard that that law firm has set, or whatever threshold that it needs to be at. Okay, and so failure to do so, of course, like with Georgia Power, failure to pay, or Flint Energy, whoever you use, failure to pay, might result in, essentially, your services being suspended. Okay. And so usually what that looks like is an attorney may file a motion to withdraw from your case. And of course, that's usually subject to the court's approval. The judge usually has to approve that. Or it may delay work in some circumstances. And so you do want to make sure that you are keeping up with that retainer, because that's really, really important in terms of maintaining the legal work that needs to be done in your case. All right, so let's talk really quickly about flat fees. Okay, so flat fees, you'll see more in criminal defense cases, things like uncontested divorces, where you kind of have an idea of how much work is going into this case. You might see it in things like estate planning, where you're talking about wills and trusts, and you might see it in traffic cases. Okay, as well. So sometimes DUIs, and then things like drug possession, theft, misdemeanors, and of course, certain felony cases. A lot of times, you will see some flat fees associated. The law firms that do that criminal defense will have a flat fee structure. So we have both because we do criminal defense as well as family law. And so again, for some cases, they may be flat fee cases, and for some cases, they may be billable cases, right? And so some of our flat fee cases are going to be criminal defense, things like juvenile court and defects, things like temporary protective orders, things like, for example, uncontested divorces. Those are cases that would probably be a flat fee in our law firm. Okay, so the of course the benefits of doing flat fee for the client is the cost is predictable. There are no monthly invoices usually to be paid unless you're financing or on some kind of a payment plan, and it's easier to budget because again we're talking about a flat fee as opposed to an ongoing fee when it comes to billable hours. Okay. Now, this might not cover things like appeals, it might not cover expert witnesses, additional proceedings, unless it's specifically included. So sometimes, for example, in criminal cases, it might not cover trial. Okay. So it might cover everything up to, trial. If your case goes to trial, there might be additional fees. And then, of course, it might not cover certain reports. It may not cover expert witnesses if you need that. It might not cover an investigator, right? So if you're talking about maybe like a murder trial, and there needs to be an investigator, that might not be covered. More than likely, it's not covered with that cost. Okay, so that's something that you do have to think about. There might be additional costs associated with that representation. All right, and then so the other way to other fee structure that personal injury attorneys use, many of personal injury attorneys, I should say, use, is a contingency fee. Okay. And you'll see that used with a personal injury and car accident attorneys, truck accident, motorcycle accident attorneys, wrongful death attorneys, slip and fall. All that stuff is under personal injury. So the way that it works is that, the attorney may not recover their fee unless there's some type of money that is going to be recovered. Okay. And so they are entitled to a percentage of whatever monetary award that comes with their representation. And so if they of course recover those fees. But generally, that type of fee structure is not permitted in criminal defense cases. It is absolutely not permitted in divorce cases or child custody cases. So we've had some calls where folks are saying, "Hey, I'm going through this divorce. If can we set up some arrangement where if you can get us, a certain amount of dollars and from the equitable division of the estate, that we give you a certain percentage?" And the answer is no. That is unethical. Okay, here in the state of Georgia. All right. Another fee structure that you might see out there, and this is rising a bit, is a subscription or membership legal services and plans. Okay. And so there are monthly legal plans, limited scope representation, or ongoing, you might be paying for ongoing legal advice. And of course, this is beneficial for, maybe small businesses, individuals with recurring legal needs that you always have legal needs because of maybe your whatever kind of business you engage in, or limited legal services, right? So sometimes folks will purchase a membership, and that membership will handle the attorneys that are on retainer, might handle things like traffic incidents, or filing for divorce, and uncontested matters, perhaps, those types of situations. And then you have your limited scope representation, and so there are a few law firms here in the state of Georgia that engage in this sort of fee structure. They're usually called unbundled legal services. So that attorney or that law firm may be able to retain them to draft your documents only. That is the limited scope of their representation, is drafting documents or attending mediation for you, or maybe handling one hearing. Okay. And so sometimes law firms will do that. Maybe they'll represent you at a bond hearing. Okay, or they will file a motion to set bond, and then of course argue that bond in a bond hearing in a criminal defense matter. Okay, that might be the limited scope of their representation, meaning that is all they are doing for you inside of your case. They're not representing you outside of that bond hearing. Okay, and so some law firms will even receive paperwork, and they will go through paperwork and review that paperwork. So it's a less expensive form of representation. However, it is not comprehensive, right? So that is the major complaint that I see with it. For example, if you're going through a divorce and you've retained an attorney just to do one thing in the case, you're going to have, ongoing need, especially if, your case is a highly litigious one, okay? Where there's a lot of discovery in your case, there's multiple hearings in your case. And if you're paying for that attorney piecemeal, then at the end of it, you're paying just for representation as you go for these legal events. At the end of it, you may be paying double the actual cost you would have paid if you just retained an attorney and had them essentially represent you from the beginning of your case to the end of your case. So remember, I keep talking about cost benefit analysis, and that is the operative phrase for the day. You do want to keep that in mind. All right, so costs versus attorney's fees. I talked a little bit about this. The cost might confuse some of the potential clients out there, so I do want to kind of address those. So some attorney fees are separate from some of the costs that might be associated with an attorney's representation. So filing fees, service fees, court reporter fees, expert witness fees, deposition fees is a big one. We do depositions often. There are fees associated with that court reporter. We're producing the record. And then of course you're being billed for the attorney being present, and they may be billing by the hour. So those fees and legal costs can essentially compound. Investigator fees, medical records, making copies, travel, as I talked about earlier today. All of those are potential fees that can absolutely, impact your case and the cost and expense of your case. Okay, and so you want to ask what fees you are responsible for when you are, if you're sitting in a consultation with an attorney and you're discussing retaining a law office. Okay, and so here are some of the questions that as a potential client, you may want to think about asking when you are in your consultation, right? So, how are you paid as an attorney? What fee structure will be used? Is this hourly or is this will be a flat fee? Is a retainer required? If so, how much is that retainer? What happens when the retainer runs out? What happens at the end of my case to the retainer? What services are included? What services are extra? How often will I receive invoices? Who will actually work on my case, right? Will paralegal time be billed, on my case? What happens if the case goes to trial? Again, there might be some additional costs associated with that. So you just want to keep in mind as you are going through this process, as you can imagine, it is pretty labor intense. Hiring that you don't want to shop by price alone. Okay, and I've said that multiple times to you. I mean, I hope that you really understand that hiring the cheapest lawyer can become an expensive decision. Okay, and so we frequently get clients that come to us from other law firms, and sometimes there are some interesting stories. Okay, and so you do just want to kind of be mindful of cheap does not necessarily mean better. Okay, you want to make sure that that firm is the right fit for you. They have the level of expertise that you expect to get your legal goals met, and that they're professional and that they're accessible. Okay, that should be really important to you. So you want to consider, I talked about this earlier, experience, communication, reputation, availability, trial experience, super important, trial experience, strategy, as well as their client reviews. And you can see those reviews in the Google reports. Okay. And so that is, you want to hear some green flags, red flags. Um, One red flag, a big red flag that I often hear is, the attorney makes or the law firm makes certain guarantees. We don't do that. I can't make you any guarantees. I don't know how your case is going to turn out. You might have some great facts, and we'll let you know that. And we're very transparent. We try to be very honest with people. That's what you're hiring us for. Okay, that transparency and that honesty and that giving our professional opinion. And so that is usually a red flag, or attorneys that are vague about the costs. That's another red flag. They're difficult to reach. You want to be mindful of retaining a law office or an attorney that you can't really get them on the horn. You can't pin them down. That might be a red flag. Some green flags are they clearly explain the billing structure and the cost. They answer your questions. They're very transparent. They set realistic expectations, and that's really important to us. We talk to our clients like, hey, this is an uphill battle. Understand this. That, for example, if you're trying to flip custody, we'll let you know, hey, this is an uphill battle. There are no guarantees, right? But you pay for our honesty, okay? And so we try to be very honest and transparent and upfront with people, okay? I think that's really, really important, and it's professional. And so some attorneys, as I mentioned earlier, they're going to cost more. You're not just paying for that attorney's time, you're paying for their experience, their judgment, their trial skill, their ability to negotiate, to strategize, their ability to prepare well, their accessibility, and the peace of mind that you get with their representation. That's what you're paying for. Okay. And so, if I hire again a plumber, and it's an important job in my home, I'm going to bring someone in that I feel is reputable, that I feel can